Today's unit is Unit 3, Magnetic Effect of Current. A galvanometer has a resistance of 50 ohm. A resistance of 10 ohm is connected across its terminals. What part of the total current will flow through the galvanometer? This is the first question. Let's solve this. Now, all of us know whenever a galvanometer has a resistance connected across, this is the diagram. Either you can draw it above or you can draw it below. That means this is a cross. Most of you know this to be as a shunt. It's called a shunt. Suppose the total current through the galvanometer and this shunt taken together is I, and let us consider the current flowing through the galvanometer is Ig, because here the current will divide, one part going through the galvanometer, the other part will be moving through the shunt, and then they will reunite once again at this particular point to give a final current of I. Right? You have understood what the diagram is. Now the question is, what is the value of Ig? Here see, we have represented the galvanometer as G, and the resistance of the galvanometer, let us consider, is also G, and that is given as 50 ohms, and the shunt value, the resistance which is connected across, is 10 ohm. Therefore the value of S is 10 ohm. So here we can write it like this: G equals to 50 ohms and S equals to 10 ohms. The question is, what is the value of Ig? You need to find out the value of Ig. Now we know that currents divide in proportion when the resistances are connected in parallel. See, this is the main current I, and a part of the current Ig is passing through the galvanometer. From the concept of resistances connected in parallel, we can use this formula that Ig is equals to S by G plus S multiplied by the total current. If you carefully observe this, the current divides in inverse ratio in parallel circuits. So this is the inverse ratio of the total current that is flowing, if the total current is I, right? Now put the values of the given S and G. So Ig will be equals to, the value of S is 10, the value of G is 50, so 50 plus 10 multiplied by I. So here the value of Ig comes out to be 10 by 60I, or it's simply 1 by 6I. So this is the answer, that 1/6 of the main current I flows through the galvanometer G. This is the answer. Even if you do not know what is the value of the main current, you can find out the ratio, or you can find out the fraction of the current that actually passes through the galvanometer. This is the answer. This is how you solve it. The second questions today, see the figure. APB and AQB, APB and AQB are semicircles. That means C is the center as given, and this is the diametrical line. Okay. What is the magnetic field at C? The question is, you need to find out the magnetic field at C. Let us see the solution. Now, there are two parts. One is the APB section, another is the AQB section. Two sections. Obviously, the magnetic field at C will be the net contribution due to APB and AQB. Let us see. The total current that is flowing through this is I, bifurcating here. Since these two parts are of equal length, the current flowing in APB and AQB must be equal because they are of equal length and equal material. So therefore the current is same. Let us say the total current in this APB section and AQB section is I dash each. So how do you write this? Let us say the magnetic field at B, that is magnetic field B at C, that is the center, is given by the sum of the magnetic fields due to APB, the top portion, and the magnetic field due to the bottom portion, that is AQB, right? Now you must understand that the central angle for these two segments is pi, that is 180 degree. As you know how to find out the magnetic field due to a current carrying conductor in shape of an arc, we'll be using it. So the net magnetic field at C is equals to, for APB segment, let's find it out. The formula, you must be aware of the formula, mu naught by 4 pi, the constant, pi, I can either write I first or pi first, pi I by the radius r. Let us assume that the radius is r, right? This is one part. Now for the current flowing in a clockwise sense, the direction of the magnetic field will be inwards, inside the plane, which is represented by a cross, plus the magnetic field due to the other segment AQB, the same relation shall persist because this is also a semicircle with a central angle of pi by r. But one thing differs, here the direction of flow of current is in anti-clockwise sense. If it's anti-clockwise, the magnetic field contribution will be upward, that is perpendicular out, which is shown by this. That means this is in and this is out. What do you observe, students? That these two expressions are exactly same, but the directions are exactly opposite. That means the contributions of each of these two together cancels out. Therefore, the net magnetic field at the center of this circle has to be 0. Is 0. Just because of the difference in direction, that is opposite direction. The magnitude remains same. This is the answer. The third question today, an interesting question. Two parallel wires carrying current in the same direction attract each other, while the two beam of electrons traveling in the same direction repel each other. There are two beams of electrons, they are traveling parallel to each other in the same direction. They repel each other, but two current carrying wires, they attract each other. Isn't it strange? Because in current carrying wires, it is generally the electrons which are moving and they are moving in parallel direction. See, what is the case? This is what is being asked. The question is this. These are two wires separated by, say, a distance of r. If they are carrying current, say, I1 and I2, then these two wires, as you know, shall attract each other. Right? This is conductor 1, this is conductor 2. they will attract each other. If this is force on 1 due to the current flowing in the second, and this is force on 2 due to the current flowing in the first. Right? They are attraction. They attract. Yes, it's true they attract. But if you have two streams or beams of electron, suppose electrons are moving in the same parallel fashion, these two beams are found to repel each other. That means repulsion. Why is this so? See, here there are two forces that are acting in this case. Here there is a single force that is acting. In this case, it is the force of attraction due to the magnetic fields of each. That is, the first conductor is in the magnetic field generated due to the second, and the second conductor is in the magnetic field due to the current flowing in the first. So, they attract each other. Using those hand rules, you can find out that they attract each other. This is exclusively the force on current carrying conductors placed in magnetic field. But when you have streams of electrons, mind it, when you have streams of electrons that is charged, there are two forces. Actually, these two electrons do attract. This is the magnetic attraction, FB. Let us say that they get attracted due to the magnetic force. Obviously, this is a current. Obviously, the direction of the current is downwards in this case, both. But these two charges, when they move freely, they do not lose their electrostatic character. That means they also retain their electrostatic character. And due to this electrostatic character, this is a force of repulsion, that is force of electrostatic nature. In fact, the electrostatic force is much stronger than the magnetic force. Thus, in effect, there are two vectors. One is attracting force, another is repelling force. Since the repelling force is much more than the attracting, the net result is repulsion. Here, the repelling part does not take place. Here is only the magnetic force, thus attraction only survives. In fact, the force of electrostatic to the force of magnetic nature, that is, if I try to have a ratio of this, it's of the order it's not that, around 10 to the power 25. That means electrostatic force is almost 10 to the power 25 times stronger than the magnetic force. Thus, these streams of electrons will effectively be repelled sidewise rather than getting attracted. This is the reason. See, you have been given a curved conductor somewhat in the shape of a U. This conductor carries a current I. The question is, find the magnetic field at O. O happens to be the center of curvature of this part. There are three parts, A, B and C. A and C happening to be the straight parts and B is the semicircular part. So you have to calculate the magnetic field at O due to this entire curved conductor. Right? The conductor carries a current of I. We'll divide this into three sections, two straight and one semicircular, right? And try to find out the net magnetic field due to the contributions of all these three. See how you solve this. Now the net magnetic field, that is at O, that is a total one, could be given by the magnetic field contribution due to A, the straight part, plus the magnetic field contribution due to B, plus the magnetic field contribution due to the C part. Two straights and one curve. As you know students, the formula, you are aware of the formula that the magnetic field at O is equals to. For the straight part, observe one thing. This could be taken as very long and this point could be lying perpendicular to this wire but close to one of the ends. This is end condition. Similarly for this one also, it's lying straight near one of its ends. So if the distance is r, which this happens to be r and this also happens to be r, we can write the formula to be mu naught by 4 pi, as you remember, I by r. Now let us put the direction. If you use your hand rule, grip rule, you will find the magnetic field due to the contribution of the A section is outwards. Let us denote it by this. Plus, let us have no spaces, so I am writing it here. For the semicircular part, the value of the magnetic field mu naught by 4 pi. The central angle is pi, so it becomes pi I by r. This case also the magnetic field is outwards. So let us say represent it like this. The third part, again the straight one, the same formula shall persist. Mu naught by 4 pi I by r. On testing with your hand rules, you will find again in this case also it's coming out. So here is an interesting fact that all these three magnetic field contributions are perpendicular to the plane outwards. Simply there need to be added, nothing else. That means you need to add all these three because all these vectors are in the same direction. Nothing much needs to be done. So if you add this, all this, mu naught by 4 pi I by r remains common. If you just observe a bit, this will be your answer. So the net magnetic field at O is equals to mu naught by 4 pi I by r within brackets 2 plus pi. This is the answer. Okay, let's have another question. An electron and a proton with same kinetic energy move in the same direction and perpendicular to a uniform magnetic field. How will their paths differ? So you have got an electron and a proton. This kinetic energy is same. Now, see how you solve this. We know students that the radius of the circle in which a charged particle moves when it moves perpendicular to a magnetic field as R equals to mv by qb. You might be aware of that cyclotron condition that you studied. Now here the value of kinetic energy for both are same. Let us say the kinetic energy is K, therefore the value of kinetic energy would be equals to half of mv square, right, for any particle. From this, V can be written as 2k by m under root from this expression. Let us put the value of V in this expression. R equals to m by qb, and instead of V, let us put the value to be 2k by m. Now this comes out to be, since this is m and this is root m, so qb in the denominator, root over of 2mk in the numerator. So K is the kinetic energy. Remember, K is the kinetic energy. Since 2 is constant, the kinetic energy is constant because in the question it's given as same kinetic energy. The charge of a proton and an electron are also same. The magnetic field also remains uniform. Therefore, we can write as K, Q and B are constant. Therefore, the value of R shall be, 2 is also a constant, is directly proportional to the square root of the mass of the particle, right? And between the electron and the proton, we know electron has a lesser mass, as mass of electron is less than mass of proton. So the radius of an electron will have lesser value compared to the radius of the proton. That means both shall move in a circular path. One more thing, they shall move in different sense because their charges are different. And if we just try to compare their paths in terms of radius, the radius of the circle in which the electron shall move shall have a lesser value compared to that of proton. So it will have a smaller radius of motion. This is the answer.